so good to have you back. It's been a minute. It's been a little bit.
Yeah, 3 years. You said you looked it up, and I'm glad you did, because I was like, it's been a while.
I know, and it's cool that you're back. And we had just talked about how, like, you were when I started my channel, I was still kind of feeling it out, and you were my first designer interview, and I was so nervous and was so happy.
Were my first video interview, and I was so nervous.
And here, look at us. That's what we do now, Zoom.
Yeah, it's all Zoom. When the pandemic hit and everyone was like, we're going on Zoom, I was like, I've already been to Zoom, and it's
awesome. Yeah. So welcome. I'm really glad to have you back. I've been watching you ever since then online on Instagram. So you have lots going on that we want to talk about. And I'll put all the links to where viewers can find you down below in the video description. But tell us about Imagine Landscape, and you're in Canada.
Yes.
Right?
Okay, so that's a big question. It could go a lot of places. So I'll start with the name. My dad is a landscape photographer, and we live in the prairie where there's nothing really necessarily obvious to look at. It's not like, and there's the mountain, and there is the waterfall, and there's the castle. We don't have that. We've got subtle lines, subtle texture, open skies that with the clouds have more texture. And watching my dad progress as a photographer over the years, and watching, like, we do a lot of critiquing. He's like, I did this, but I'm not sure, these 3 shots, which one's the better one? And so we would talk about, and I grew up developing an eye for texture and line, and the way movement of line can create movement of the eye or can stop the eye, and all this stuff. And my very first designs, I named them all after places or concepts, because I love to look at things and think, what could that be in knitting? Or as I'm knitting, I might think of like what would that be in the real world? And so I didn't know when I started my business exactly where I was going to be. I was like, I don't know if I'll be a dyer and a designer, or what's going to happen. So I just kind of left it open, and went from there. I started it because I actually won a contest, and it was to get new designers out into the world.
Okay.
And I had been modifying patterns, like, just almost since the moment I started knitting, because the 3rd knitting book I read was Stitch and Bitch 2. And Stitch and Bitch 2 basically says, you like this hat, but you want to knit it in another yarn? Here's how you do the math. You like that cable, but you want it in a sweater rather than a hat? Here's how you modify that. Here's how you modify this. And I was like, wait, like, this isn't a code I have to follow. It's a code I can crack.
Right.
And I just went with it.
That's fantastic.
Modify, invent. Everyone in my family got a custom sweater, but it was that jump to saying, well, what about knitting designing for everybody? How do you standardize? How do you grade a pattern? And why do they call it grading? Why don't we call it sizing a pattern? That's weird, people. What is up with that?
Bizarre.
Yeah. So I entered the contest kind of on a whim. I was in the middle of a big bout of burnout. I homeschooled my kids from kindergarten to grade 12, and it's a lot.
Big bout of burnout. I hear you. Yeah.
And it's playful and joyous. Our version was very project based. Yeah. Where we'd get into a concept and do everything around the concept for a little while. And then we kind of have a break period while we got curiosity built up again. And then we kind of let loose and all this. And I was just in the middle of kind of a burnout, and this contest came up, and I was just like, well, I'm just going. And then as soon as I won it, I was like, well, but now I have to do it.
Now I have to follow through.
And not just with that cowl. I was like, I feel like for the podcaster that it was a playful day. Kit, who's now with Isolda, I feel like I've made a promise to be a designer, not just to publish this pattern, but like to actually keep on. So, well, okay, the kids are old enough.
Which cowl was that? Which cowl?
It's called Crossed Furrows Cowl.
Okay.
Cowl, no, not cowl. It's called the Crossed Furrows Cowl, and in it, I love plaids, and I wanted to invent an easy way to get a plaid in a pattern. And so it's a mosaic color work, 3-color pattern. And you'll see the name comes from a picture that my dad has. It's really, the picture online is not as impressive as in person, but it's this black prairie dirt, the soil of the prairies, and then almost lime green little dots because it's the sprouts in a field. So
Sure.
the furrows for the tractor didn't quite go straight. There's this one spot where the lines kind of just cross a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I called it the cross furrows cowl.
Sure.
And that's what kicked it all off.
And I live in Southeast Wyoming in the prairie. So I totally know. And all of the land around us for several miles is organic wheat. So I totally I get what you're saying. Yeah. About the subtlety of the landscape. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot in common with the way that everything's made up of knits and pearls, kind of with knitting, especially with textured knitting, which is my true love, like more so than lace knitting. I feel like the prairies has a lot with that, like it's kind of like a knits and pearls landscape.
Now you're in Saskatchewan or Alberta?
I'm now in Manitoba. I grew up.
I totally got that wrong.
It's okay. I would just, if people can name 2 Canadian provinces, generally speaking, they're doing really well.
Right.
I did grow up in Saskatchewan. We moved a lot when I was a child, but like my most formative years were in Saskatchewan.
Mm.
But yeah, now I'm in Manitoba, and it's weird because Manitoba, even though it's in the prairies, is wet prairie. So as you go more westward, the prairies gets drier and drier. So
Right.
Alberta's like ranch country, right? It's less farming,
Yeah.
and then Saskatchewan's like, ooh, all the farming. And Manitoba is this weird, like, yeah, but we've also got fishing industries. And I'm like, what? Fish? We don't eat fish. I'm from Saskatchewan. Fish is something that had to travel.
Right. Like people in Wyoming, if you don't eat fish unless it's trout you caught in the mountains.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We don't have mountains or we didn't in Saskatchewan. So yeah, no, it's a really interesting difference to be here in Manitoba.
And so how did you get involved with what's up with the gnomes? Because I think it's fantastic. I love them so much, but you're amazing. Like you have all these creative gnome creations and designs. And I'm like,
okay, so it's funny. I'm gonna do an origin story in a minute, but I just want to say I'm friends with a couple designers, and one of my friends is just ace at socks. And I keep going, how can she come up with a new sock? How can she invent a new heel? I don't understand. Like a sock is a sock is a sock. And then I was like baffled by her genius. And then I looked over at my gnomes. I'm like, a gnome's basically a sock. How do I keep coming up with more gnomes? How am I completely blocked on sock design, but can find like this huge range?
The gnomes are flowing.
Yeah. So I've always loved Scandinavian inspired stuff right from the beginning. I remember getting my first Ikea catalog when I was 12 in Ontario. Hamilton, Ontario had an Ikea. We had just moved to Guelph for my father to do his PhD, and we would go and get a few things. Right. And I kept that catalog for years. I have Ikea catalogs going way back. So this has always been something that's kind of really attracted me. My husband's also from Germany, and my first time going was at Christmas, and they had those Christmas markets, and they have a lot of that kind of Father Christmas gnomish kind of stuff in the handicraft markets. And it's always just hit home for me in an aesthetic kind of way. Mm-hmm. And so I found a pattern for someone else's gnomes, and I just went crazy obsessed. I just started and never stopped. And I started tweaking. I was like, I don't like this part. I don't like that. I want to do this. No, I'm going to do this. And I just kept iterating. And at that point, that's where my first pattern and the hashtag I use for all the gnomes is never not gnoming.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's because my son would walk in and be like, Mom, what are you making? Oh, wait. Hashtag Mom's never not gnoming. Because back in, 2008 or whatever it was, like 12-year-old boys were very sassy with hashtags.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Very sassy with their moms and hashtags, at least in my household. And so I named my first pattern Never Not Gnoming and fully expected 12 people to join me. Like I expected to keep on gnoming for the rest of my life, personally, just riffing on the pattern and having fun. And
I think I made that one. I think that was my first one too.
It's a really great pattern here. Why don't I show it? It's got
I do. I
3
think I named
sizes.
mine. I might have named him either Nate or Nathaniel.
Yep. Yeah. So
Of course,
I did
they all
3
have to have
sizes.
GN names.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
So this is Norbert,
No, I remember that.
right?
I didn't
And
realize how big he was in the photo. You don't have your hand for scale. I didn't realize
yeah,
how big
but
he
he's not a big gnome for me anymore, right?
Oh,
So a lot of the mystery gnomes are more like a little bigger.
love that. Oh, and I love the hat.
Yes. Oh, and I don't have it with me. Maybe we'll do a jump cut in a little while when I talk about this guy. But I knit that hat for human size. Like I designed a hat.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I did Norbert, who's sort of the big gnome, and he's modeling the vertical beard.
Yes.
And then I've got Natasha,
Oh,
and Natasha is the medium gnome.
okay.
But the medium gnome and the small gnome are actually not that substantially different. But what I did for the difference is I put a rounded bottom with like a contrast if you want. But this was designed explicitly to be an ornament because if your Christmas tree doesn't have a gnome by now, you're doing Christmas wrong.
Well, right.
So that was never not gnoming. And like I said, I really thought like 12 people might knit with me, but I would keep on riffing on gnomes forever.
Yeah.
And then it was actually a couple hundred. And I was like, well, that's
Fun.
exciting.
Yeah.
And then I published Here We Gnome Again. And it was madness. I have never felt like that when I published a pattern before. And what's amazing about Here We Gnome Again is that it's probably the first time I ever designed something where I was like, head concept, chart it out, like do it on paper, and it worked. Almost everything I design, I have to design on the needles, and anything I think I know ahead of time turns out to be wrong. Like, I'm like, I'll do the rate of decreases, or I'll start them here, or whatever. And if I write anything down, I'm usually like, edit, 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 wrong. I physically have to have the knitting in front of me to be a designer.
Right.
So I'm really pleased with this pattern, but it's also what really kicked it, I think, for the rest of the world into high gear.
Yes, that's the one. I have made several of those, and for people for like Christmas gifts or in a care package box. And mine is not as big as yours.
This is the worsted weight version. So I did this one in 2 versions, and this is the worsted weight one.
And I knit the fingering one, and it sits on my mom's shelf like all the time, though, not just at Christmas. Love it.
Yeah. So, and then this one also got a hat, but I don't know where that one is. So I can't run and get it. But yeah, Here We Gnome Again seemed to be the one where the rest of the world kind of perked up and said, oh no, hang on. we might get into this thing. Yeah, and since then, I published a couple more patterns. And then at one point I was like, well, why don't I make it a mystery? Because it's so low risk, but so high reward. Doesn't have to fit anybody. Yeah. If you get it wrong, the clue was like this much knitting.
It's okay.
And it's okay. It's just a gnome. And because wonkiness is gnominess. Like there's
I love that. Wonkiness is gnominess.
I should make a t-shirt.
Just saying.
Because I now do
a sticker at the very least.
I agree. Okay, we're gonna have to remind myself at the end of all this. So yeah, the mystery knit along thing took it because I find playfulness something we kind of lack as people, adults these days. And I think a lot of people felt like the gnomes gave them a little permission to be a little more playful, but the mystery knit along side of it really just turned it to 100. And boy, do I have fun with those mysteries. Just so much fun. Yeah.
And you're doing one now, aren't you?
I'm doing one. The December ones are big ones. I go all out for the December ones. So this is the second December one. And last year I did it. I was designing and working on that one already sort of in March, April. So as lockdown was coming, but it wasn't planned to be this moment of brightness in a terrible Christmas. But that's what it turned out to be for most of us. Was like the one thing we had to look forward to every December morning was that people could wake up and they'd know there'd be a clue and they could go online and they can talk with people about it. But it was a really profound moment, that one. And this one is slightly less profound, but more joyous. And
super fun.
I was like, well, I don't want to do 24 knitting clues. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of knitting. It's a lot of pressure, I think, for people. I don't like my things to be high pressure. Like this idea that you'd knit a mini skein every day.
It's a lot.
I'm not retired. I have I have other hobbies. So yeah, I started to, why not tell a story? And what was amazing about last year's story was I actually made like a storybook. I did photos and it's available in the pattern file as like its own PDF now from last year, and I'll do that again for this year. But it's like I tried to be a writer before I tried to be a knitter. I have always loved writing. I have multiple children's books that have been rejected. Like this. No, that's okay. That's just writing.
Yeah, part of it. Sure.
Yeah. So when it happened, like the storybook, I just loved it. And so like you've got the pictures, you've got the story. And I just happened to decide that I wasn't going to make it a Christmas event because I wanted it to be more open to the world. So even though I called that one the Adventure Gnome so that I could have the pun of Advent, and it was this design, by the way.
So cute. Oh my God, that's darling. Look at his little curly shoes.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I haven't had gnome with legs or feet before. I decided that there was a version that was this color. There was also a version, can we see it up there? No, I think it's too dark. There's a version where he's much more like navies and grays, and that's the one I used for the story. But I invented an entire gnomish land called the Dimple Woods, and I invented a tradition called the longest night. Right? Longest night. And so it's a solstice thing. And so,
cool.
And it's got its own, like I said, it's got its own little traditions because I made a story and a storybook. And then this year, the story that's going with this year's Mystery Gnome is it's another story that involves, so this last year's story was a little complicated. It was layered. It was about Nutmeg, which is this gnome. Okay. But Nutmeg was auditioning to play the Gnome of the North in the classic gnomish tale.
Right.
Just like kind of like playing our Santa.
Sure.
And so then the storybook was about the Gnome of the North, and it was basically the story that Nutmeg would act in. And so like this pattern exists in my brain both as Nutmeg the actor and Nutmeg, no, not Nutmeg, but as the Gnome of the North, who has no name and is merely the Gnome of the North, the way we would have sort of more like a Santa Claus or something like that. And so, yeah, then all of a sudden I'm like, well, we now, like, to fill the space of the storybook, I was like, well, now I'll just make up traditions and I'll make up things that happen. And it's
so cool.
It's getting very layered.
Yeah. So here's my question though. If people wanted to purchase that, I mean, you can buy last year's now because it's all out, right?
Yes. And it's available as clues still. So if you want to do your own Christmas in July, it won't be a mystery anymore. But I preserved the whole thing as a PDF in the order it was sent out. So so like in addition to the stories, there's also some recipes. There's also a surprise knitting pattern in there. And all of that is available in like the PDF of the 24 clues.
The whole package. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was like, I put a lot into this and I think people I was trying to figure out how do I also like the recipes and the stories. People will want just a simple printable PDF of just the pattern, but they also want the things. And so I just decided I'm going to keep it as, so there's a fair number of files in that pattern, especially because I've had it translated into a couple languages, but yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So you could do your own knit along, not a mystery, but like if you and a friend wanted to do something where every day you were doing something, and I mean, it's not knitting every day because some days are story days and some days are recipe days. And
I'm scheming for the channel for the Purl Together community for like what you just said, Christmas in July. How fun.
Yeah. I mean, it just,
we might have to do that.
I would like it if you did. The more people do this, the more stuff pops up in my Instagram, in my Ravelry, whatever. Like people just stop being so serious and worried. And it's beautiful to watch.
So tell us, I mean, you have so many things coming up. I think it's fantastic. So in January, begins the 12 months of happiness.
Yes. So I'm calling it the Year of Gnomes. Because I realized that as of this current Mystery Knit Along, I have 12 physical gnome patterns. So not not the sweater, not the other stuff. I've got one that's got clothes for gnomes, but actual 3-dimensional gnome
Clothes
pattern.
for gnomes. That's great.
Yeah, I did one. There's sweaters.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's darling.
there's a dress and there's a scarf and
That's so
there's a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. So that one's called Never Naked Gnomes. Because you need that. So I realized I had 12 actual 3-dimensional gnomes. And I was like, well, that's too obvious. You can't have 12 of something and 12 of little somethings and not do a thing of it. So I was originally actually going to do this all on my own. And I was just going to call it the Year of Gnomes for myself. And I keep seeing people who've knit the gnomes in the same colors over and over again.
Oh.
And then they have all of the different patterns. Because, like, let's say I were to put all of these on the shelf together. Each one I followed my own design whimsy. I followed the muse.
I've never seen the one. Wait, where's the one on your face? Show me. I've never seen that.
Gnome is where you hang your hat.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
Look at that beard.
That's amazing.
Look at that beard. That beard is done.
Spiral curls.
Yeah, it's so easy too.
And the hat's like an ear flap hat.
Yep.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And what's funny is a lot of people wrote me after this saying, oh, I just knit my first sweater. Because that was a surprise in the pattern, is you did a sweater. And people were like, yeah, I've never done a sweater before. And I was like, well, congratulations. You now understand basic raglan shaping.
That's so great.
So if I were to put all of those together on the shelf, they look joyous, they look fun, and each one, it made sense, the design decisions, the colors I chose at the time. But I see these people who've been using this restricted palette, and I said, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, like, I'm going to pick some yarn, I'm going to re-knit all my patterns, and I'm going to call it the Year of Gnomes. And then I realized the second I put that out in the world, there are going to be people who are like, I want in, how can I be in? So I started to think, well, rather than making that a panic thing I do in January, what if I put some thought into this? So, yeah.
Oh, it's a good idea.
Better. And so I've actually made it pretty awesome, I think. And one of the most important things to understand is you do not have to do gnomes all year. You do not have to do 12 months of gnomes. You do not have to knit all 12 patterns. You do not have to do a restricted palette. For me, that's what I'm doing. So I'll quickly, I'll show you what I'm doing mine in. So I have this palette from Miss Babs, and it's 2 grays, a nearly white, it's ever so slightly gray, and then this amazing red.
Yes. And how festive.
What I like about this is it's like so classically Scandinavian winter.
Yes.
That it like works for Christmas, it works for November, it works for February.
Yeah.
I also now want a sweater. I will be honest. So I decided, okay, how can I do this? So I wanted people to feel like they could do it at whatever level they want. And I'm also mean that for the participating dyers, the participating yarn shops are participating, knitting groups are participating, and everybody gets to call their own shots. There are very few rules in this. And I really need to stress that people can be going like, where do I buy the patterns? If I do this, do I get patterns? It's like, no, because there's no requirements.
Okay.
If you happen to knit a gnome in a calendar month, you can enter for prizes. That's really the way this works.
Okay.
If you want to knit the same thing over and over, you can do that. You could have a Year of Rainbow Gnomes, right? You could already own a pattern and just do like a Roy G. Biv.
Yeah.
Or you could just knit one gnome in March. That's an up and coming mystery knit along, let's say.
Okay.
You could enter that for a prize. It's that open. Like,
That's
I really don't want people to feel like, oh, well, my life got busy in August and I didn't know in August, so I'm out. It's like, no.
It's okay.
Yeah. And so I contacted some dyers, but dyers are also allowed to keep joining. Yarn shops are still signing up. Prize lists are expanding. And so I've figured out a way to open it to both Ravelry and people who are off Ravelry. Okay. I've figured out an Instagram way to enter. Nice. And yes.
So people can read all about how to do this on your website though, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And there's like on the tab up top, there's like a Year of Gnomes thing, but you can also just like on my Instagram profile, click Year of Gnomes.
Right.
Yeah. And so I just wanted it to be low stress, low drama, easy for me to run, easy for people to say, the way I'm doing it is this way. Or for dyers to say, I don't want to do I don't want to do X, but I want to do every month I'm going to offer 4 mystery, like I'm going to go with the month and do colors, and I'm going to do something once a month. So you won't know July till it happens. And other people are like, Miss Babs, for instance, has a spring set, a summer set. Like they kind of have seasonal options already set up. You can have them now, kind of an idea. So I wanted this to be about yes. That would be my summary. People can like, can I do this? I'm like, yes. Can I skip that part? Yes. Can I modify the gnomes? Yes.
Sure. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's just, I can't even describe the gnome happiness. I love them so much.
And a lot of people, I feel like the knitting community, I can feel a bit of side eye. Like, what's with this? What's with all these gnomes? And
the side eye.
The thing is, when you're knitting them, you may be feeling like, yeah, I can kind of see this. This is a little cute. It's pretty fast. You know, I'm learning some new techniques. I'm glad she made the tutorial for that. And then there's this day where you've got all the little bits, and there's not too many to sew together. And there's tutorials on how to do this. But you go from things I knit to personality. And it's like magic when you assemble them, because it really goes from knitting to creation in a way that I think people who are on the outside don't quite get until you've done that.
Yeah. And I will say, you mentioned this a moment ago, but you also do video tutorials. And I mean, I'm known for that on my channel.
You sure are.
But however, I'm totally happy to just join along and then provide the link.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. You've done a great job, you know, doing those video tutorials, and that's available on your YouTube, and we'll put links down below to all that. Yeah. That's fantastic. I'm going to do it. I signed up. Well, there's not a sign up necessarily.
No.
But I'm saying I saw on your Instagram, and I'm like, oh, what's this about? 12 months of gnoming. I want to know about that. And I went over to your website, and let me just do a little plug for you too. Sarah has a brand new Patreon page. So go check that out as well, where you can support her work as a designer and a knitter and an instructor and, you know, all that. So go check that out, because I did, and it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. One of the things I wanted with the Patreon was I wanted to do monthly Zoom nights about this.
Gnome night.
How do I not give the whole internet the Zoom link? Because it's not like people are buying a pattern. Like if I can do a Ravelry update or a whatever update,
right?
There's like there's a mailing list about that, right? Yes. But I was like, I'm not putting Zoom up for everybody. Right. And how do I do that? And all of this. So that's where the Patreon idea came from. But also I was starting like, and I really went back and forth on this. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, because really what I'm offering is Zoom.
Well, and the coloring page.
There are some coloring pages, 100%.
I got mine.
Yeah. So I started thinking, the thing is that some people just really want more community, and Patreon is a way to kind of condense and super concentrate a way to connect, especially if we're going to be talking on Zoom and then also chatting on Patreon. All of a sudden I feel like that shifts. And so that's really what tipped it over for me. Yes, it's another thing for me to go and moderate, and but it's more than that. It's a place for me to go and meet people and talk and find out what they like about the gnomes. The feedback I get, like I read every comment in every thread for every knit along. Yeah, when I put out a mystery knit along, reading Ravelry is my job. I spend hours every day. I can log in and have 200 to 400 unread thread posts when I'm doing a mystery knit along. I know.
I totally get it. It's like me reading my Facebook group, which has 7,000 people in it, or me reading, you know, comments on YouTube. It takes some time, but that's okay. That's because
part of your job,
spreading the gnome love.
Yeah. And so more than it being just a job, it's also like I learned so much from what people find hard. So there's stuff in this current mystery knit along, and I will not name it, that people are really struggling with. And I was like, huh, I thought I was pretty good because I designed a gnome entirely based on knits and purls.
And so maybe you weren't anticipating that.
Yeah, but I can get so much better. So the more I communicate with people, the
Right.
better I am at figuring out where there's going to be stress points and where I should be offering options and where I should be maybe not doing X and doing Y instead.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And then the thing is I'll do that, and then I'll find out that, oh no, there's this other whole bunch of people that find Y super complicated. So the people that found X a little annoying, we're going back to a little annoying for all the Y people. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing as a creator that you do, you try to do your best to do those tutorials and to make it clear. And sometimes, I mean, you're doing this at a distance, sometimes you're doing it virtually. And at some point you do realize, you do the best you can. And sometimes people have to find a neighbor or a friend or a family member to help them in person, or their local knit shop or whatever. And you do ask, and you care about whether people are successful, and you do the best you can. Sometimes though, people are learning in such a way that they need that to sit right next to someone.
Yeah, they definitely. And other people really prefer, like, the video tutorials aren't perfect for everybody because not everybody has great internet access. Right. So then there's like, well, but what about photo tutorials with written stuff? And then
it's tedious to make those, but I hear you.
And back in the day, I started with doing photo tutorials.
Yeah, we all did. Yeah.
And now I'm like, okay, I hear you, but I'm switching to video because it changed how I could tell people that it was okay. And that's like the number one thing I try to say in like every video. This is the way I'm doing it, and this is kind of the result we're going with. But if you hate this or whatever, like if you've got something you want to substitute, this technique is being done this way right now for this reason. But if you can figure out another way, if you can, or whatever, if you're going to just cut this out entirely, I'm pretty not high tolerance, I'm high encouragement of make it work your way.
Yeah, you're totally accepting of people's modifications. And that's, what I'm all about. You're the boss of your knitting. Be the boss knitter. Hashtag boss knitter.
Yeah. I'll say, like, you're the boss of your gnomes.
There you go. Gnome boss.
Yeah. Because some people find their gnomes get very bossy. They'll be partway through Clue and the gnomes will be like, we're not doing cables here. We're doing seed stitch. Right. So like you're the boss of you, or you're the boss of your gnomes until your gnomes are your boss of you.
It's great. That's so, I'm so excited about this.
Yeah. And so I feel like I want people to know that there's a whole range of complexity of the gnomes. Mm-hmm. So if you've never done color work, a gnome is a great place to try color work because it doesn't have to fit anybody. And if it's all puckered and a little wonkiness is gnominess, right? So and of course I did a tutorial.
So cute. Oh my word. What's that one's name?
Nemo. I kind of felt like he had a little bit of a captain on a ship vibe with this beard.
Yeah. Totally.
So that, you can do that. Or if you want to start learning to cable or whatever, or you might be like, I need my knitting to be way lower stress. In that case, I did the Never Not Gnoming patterns that I showed you before, but I kept getting people asking for me to do tiny gnomes. And the thing about tiny gnomes is it's really fiddly.
Yeah.
Like, tiny things can get so fiddly so fast. And so I was like, okay, so I want tiny, but I also want something that I could use to teach gnomes. So then I designed No Fun Like Gnome Fun. And that one was designed to teach people the key parts of how I approach gnome knitting without making it fussy. So I designed both a garter version and a worsted version. So this is the worsted weight version.
Look at the whole family.
Yes. We've got Noah. Yes. And we've got Naomi. And we've got Niblet. And Niblet is a professor of oak tree mythology and maintains the world's largest collection of acorns. Oh, and everyone's got their own story, and they crack me up. Like, telling you that this guy maintains the world's largest collection of acorns makes me, on the inside, kind of go in just so giggly, because the dude is the size of an acorn. Like, And so the way this happened is I was holding up I don't have the fingering weight versions, but like for size difference, here's Naomi, or here's Noah in fingering and worsted.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And so these were all designed to be knit like in a 2 to 3 hour session. And so I was doing this and I was on Instagram Live, and I was, because with Instagram Live, you got to have the camera and your face and the whole thing. And so I'm holding them up so they're in the shot. And I was like, oh, hang on. And so I had already tested the other two. Like this was through test knitting, and I was just like doing the last bit of tidying and I was basically pre-launching. Right. And I was like, well, I got to go back to my testers. So I sat down and I invented Niblet so that I could have the fingering weight versions as earrings.
Oh my word. Oh, that's darling. That's a fingering weight niblet.
And so like worsted weight niblet is pretty small, and fingering weight niblet's like an inch. He's stretched a little bit because of gravity, but like, and that came about entirely because I was talking to people in the online in the community and just being joyous and just like, holding this one up, but the smaller version. Right. And I was just like, wait. And yeah, I think people literally saw it happen in front of them as my brain clicked in.
That's fantastic.
So you could knit one of these a month. And that would be enough. It's like a 2-hour knitting session. And once you memorize the pattern, it's way faster than that. You don't have to do, a cable something. Right. If you want to stretch, go. But,
and I love that so much. I love the cabled ones that look like Gnome wizards.
I know. There's very strong wizard vibes.
Oh, yeah. That's fantastic.
Right. So I'll take it off again. So I took the same motif as Nathan here, and I changed it a little bit so that it would fit humans. Skinnier and skinnier.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I put a big, big tassel on it.
Yeah.
And then I made it into a sort of a stocking cap. And it's just, I think the lighting is better if I do it this way, isn't it? Yeah. So it's just super, super fun.
Yes.
People are doing it with white here, red everywhere, and then a big white tassel. And it's kind of a Santa thing. So I was knitting Nathan. I was like, I feel like this is going to be a hat for me. And gosh, I just love it so much. And then I knew that not everybody would want to necessarily go there. Maybe for I've got some newborn sizes, I've got a wide range of sizes. So maybe for babies or whatever. But I was like, okay, so I'll just throw in a beanie for people. So you could also have a more.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
So you get both. And because I'm about yes. That's basically my design philosophy, is to give people yes.
That's so neat. Love that. So your Year of Gnoming, the first, yes. Which one? Okay, wait. Let me collect myself here in my happiness, because I'm overwhelmed with gnominess.
You should see my work surface here.
Great. It's so great. I need more of that in my life. So the Year of Gnoming, people can go and read all about that on your Instagram, on your website, but they can get to it from your Instagram or just typing in Imagination Landscape.
Imagine Landscapes. Yeah.
Imagine Landscape. I'll put it down below. Yeah. I just can't speak because I'm overwhelmed with happy gnominess. But people can read about that, and that will begin in January.
In January. It's that simple. I'm knitting them in the order I publish them. So if you're looking for a structure or something like that.
I like structure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And if you like data, one of the things you can find on that website or in the Ravelry group where we're discussing this at the header, I've got a bunch of handy links. I've made a table of how much yarn you'll need. So they're listed in the order they're published.
Yes.
And they are broken down how much hat yarn do I recommend? Right. How much, and then at the bottom, if you're knitting all of them, I do a summary of how much you'll need. Now that's tricky because that only tells you you'll need that much hat yarn.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't tell you like if you're not going to knit the hat and like if you're not making a red hat, that doesn't help you. It tells you you're going to be making, 600 yards worth of hats or whatever, but it doesn't tell you like if you're mixing it up. So like I am not knitting all of my hats red.
Okay.
I see. I'm going to mix it up for every gnome, but it gave me at least a place to start, because I was talking to Miss Babs and they're like, well, how much yarn are you going to need? I'm like, that's a really important question. So I put it in the order I published it, and I gave everybody like exactly, if you want to make this gnome, here's and the first page is yards, the second page is meters.
Okay.
And so that's a good resource if you're trying to figure out which order did I publish them in, or whatever.
And the reason I love that too is because I have like a lot of, like things like this, right? I have a lot of just stuff hanging around. And so that's really handy to know, because this is a great color for maybe for a body, or, but
I will say that in the table, I listed it by yardage and meterage.
Yeah.
But if you go to the actual pattern, it lists it in grams. So if you're wondering, okay, so
brilliant.
27 grams, how much, or 27 meters, how many, like, is this ball enough? If you've got a scale and you can weigh it, then that'll help a lot. So that table was starting to get like more and more complicated. And so but every pattern lists.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah. It's fantastic. And it's a great way to use up, sock yarn scraps or whatever, unless of course you want to be like Sarah this particular time and knit it all in the same color palette for each gnome. But I
might have enough scraps to actually
probably have a bunch of different ones, and fun.
Yeah, it's just going to be super fun. And the other thing I'm going to do, I haven't set that up yet, but a lot of people keep asking me, I struggle to knit it tiny. Can I do it on DK? Can I do it in worsted? And I keep saying yes. And I have guidelines for doing that. And for some of the gnomes, I knit them in both versions. Like we talked about this one, for instance, that I did a both fingering and a worsted weight. So there's like yardage for both sizes. There's needle recommendations for both sizes, the whole thing. But for other patterns, I don't have that. And so what I'm going to do this year is I'm actually going to put up a Google form for people to fill out saying, I knit X pattern. I knit it in X weight.
Right.
Color 1, I use this many yards. I use this many for color 2 or whatever. Yeah. And then I'm going to be able to like build a database for people. And I'm going to be able to say, when someone comes to me and I want to knit this one, but in worsted, how big is he going to be and how much do I need of each color? And I'll be able to say, okay, well, 10 knitters have already done that. Here's your ball.
Have the community help you gather that information. Absolutely. Yeah.
I need to design new gnomes, not just keep reknitting old ones.
Right. So I think that's also the value of the patron community, is that you can reach out to your patrons and put that, the patron platform is nice, I think, because it's away from the noise and the clutter of Facebook and or Ravelry, and it's the people that are supporting you, and so they like to have that connection with you. And then those Zoom nights provide that community, and then you have some perks for patrons. People can, I like the coloring pages,
and especially, so one of the things, where this started was, I was like, if people want to do the thing where they limit their palette, how do you pick? So I was like, well, what if we did a couple of the different, so there's 4 different gnomes with different approaches. Like, so I had a friend, her name's Nitty Jo, and she's a designer, and she wrote the Color Work Bible. Okay. She's also an amazing artist. So I had her draw a couple of them. So one of them is the color work one. There's another one, I think we did this one. And so, but then we put them real small. And we did 4 on a page for each one. So like you could say, okay, I'm gonna color all 4 in grays and yellows. Right. And then I'm gonna try it in grays and blues. And then I'm gonna try it in blue and green. And then I'm gonna try an autumn thing. And then it's tiny. And so it's more about trying the colors and how do they look on a beard, in a body, or whatever. And you can kind of mix and match and see, okay, basically, so we made them tiny.
Just get out your colored pencils, and then you have the added bonus of putting it in your bullet journal.
Yes. But then I was like, well, obviously some people are going to want this bigger. So we actually made some coloring pages. And if people ask, I'm probably going to make them, like right now, we have a coloring page where there's just the 4 of them on one page. So they're about like this big each. Yeah. But I was like, do people want where they're 1 per page? No. Talk to me.
Leave a comment.
Yep, because it's digital. We can do that. It's pretty simple to provide like extras like that.
Yeah. That's so much fun. I'm excited. I'm super excited. So people can go sign up. Well, you don't have a sign up thing, just do it. But people can go see like how to enter for prizes if you're into that, if you want to do that, and what hashtags to use and so forth.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will say that while there is no requirement to do one a month,
right.
If you do, you're part of a special like elite group of super gnomers, and I recognize
super gnomer. I want to be a super gnomer.
And there will be a digital prize that everybody who does that will receive.
Whoa.
And there's the grand prize draw for that category is pretty juicy.
There's incentive.
Yes, there is. Well, I feel like if you've done 12 gnomes in a year, like that's special. Like you need some celebration. You need some champagne. I can't send you champagne, but I can do some things.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, we're just gonna have a gas. And if I publish new patterns, you can use those new patterns.
Ooh.
As
part of 12.
Yeah. So like right now I have 12 patterns, but it doesn't have to be the ones like as of January 1st on the stroke of midnight. Only those. No, I'm making more patterns. You should see what's coming.
Yes.
It's gonna be the Year of Gnomes. Is really what's happening.
I'm excited. All right. Cool.
Yeah. Now I have a question for you because I've been talking a long time. Now you've been doing this daily stuff.
Yeah.
And I know you do some pre-recording and you're like making it a little easier on yourself in that sense. But I wonder, what are you learning about yourself or about getting ideas or what are you learning from this?
Oh, that's hard. From my daily videos or from all the people that
from the process of doing this daily.
Are we recording this still?
I think your viewers would love this. You don't have to include it.
Oh, yeah, that kind of took me off guard. There's several things I've learned about myself. Both years that I've tried to do daily vlogging videos, it's good to have structure and it's good to have, that discipline to get everything done and get it edited and uploaded, because all of the daily videos through December we record the day before. So it's not like I have, 2 weeks to get the edit done.
Right.
It's the day before and then I edit hopefully right afterwards and get it uploaded before lunch.
Yep.
And then it's scheduled to go live at 5 a.m. the next morning.
So you're still doing things daily, but you have a little bit of a buffer, but it's a minimal buffer.
And we kind of had to do that because of the time difference between where I live and where my co-host Anne, where she is. So we kind of needed to do that. Last year was more difficult because my co-host was Amba O'Brien and she lives in Australia. And so that was more difficult. But I think what I'm learning is, one, I don't need to buy more yarn. Because you interview all these fantastic dyers, you're like, I want that, I want that, I want some of that. And so a little restraint is good. However, I have indulged a little bit. I'll show you that in a second. So I got this gnoming stitch marker from Ann Tudor. She does the glass lamp work. And then she has rainbow gnome washi tape, which I love. Because like I mentioned, I have a bullet journal. And so I collect washi tape. Yeah. So a little restraint is good. However, I have indulged a little here and there and, but I do need a little more structure in my life. And I realize how kind of by the seat of my pants I really am. And that's okay. Yeah. But I could benefit from getting things done in a timely manner. My personality type, I tend to be kind of a procrastinator. And so I'm like, that's just a self-improvement kind of thing,
Yeah, although it is also an approach to life. Like we moralize a lot about last minute versus prepared.
Yeah.
Right. We put one on a pedestal and we denigrate the other.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are strengths in both.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling like one is not working for you less than you'd like, then that's the key thing, right? Like I don't feel like one is necessarily morally better.
Well, sometimes I work better under pressure.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say, right? With procrastination is that until it's important, it's not important.
Right. So I do tend but on the other hand, I also have that feeling of accomplishment, like, yay, that's done for the day. Woohoo. Kind of like getting your walk in earlier in the morning rather than waiting until after dinner. Like to me, I have that little feeling of all right, I did that and now that's done. And now I can go off and do other things,
Yeah.
you know?
I talk a lot about like gifts to future Sarah. So like I do the thing early or I do the thing now, and
Right.
current Sarah is kind of stinky about it. But it's a gift to future Sarah.
Right.
Right? And so that like the idea of future Sarah can get me through a fair amount. It's like, well, I'm doing this now, but future Sarah is gonna like pat on the back to past Sarah. And I do make sure like when I hit that moment, I do make sure to go back like and be grateful to myself.
Right.
Like I'm really glad I did that. So that I'm like rewarding the next time I'm in that kind of stinky place where I'm like, but I know I'm gonna really appreciate that. And so I've like split myself into multiple selves inside my head. I'm like, hey, future Sarah, just sending you a gift now.
That's right. And I think for those of us that are creators, you know, whether that's on YouTube or whether it's on Instagram or whatever, it's not all happiness and joy. I mean, sometimes there's things that you got to slog through it and it's really hard and you got to make yourself. And I try to say to myself, why am I procrastinating this particular video or this particular edit portion? Like, why do I not want to do that? You know? And then kind of just break that down and think about it a little bit. I'm like, you know, and it's never as awful as I think it's going to be. It never is. It's just a matter of like getting in there and getting it done.
I hate editing my tutorials. I will say that. I love public speaking. Which is shocking. I was so shy growing up. Like I can't even tell you how repressively, tragically shy I was growing up. And we moved a lot. Like it was bad over and over in my life. And at some point I like broke through the fear barrier and discovered I'm not just, I'm fairly good at public speaking. I love giving actual speeches. I do workshops. I do all sorts of like personal coaching kind of things. And I was a coach for soccer. But hearing my voice when I'm doing a tutorial, I hate it. I can always think of, oh, I should have phrased, because I'm also kind of a writer, right? We talked about that. And I like getting my phrasing perfect. But when you're shooting a video, unless you're willing to do voiceover, you're just doing and talking.
Yeah.
And you're being a teacher in the moment.
Right.
Not a writer. And
and the other thing that there comes a point where you have to just get over yourself and you're like, okay, so maybe I didn't say that as perfectly as I wanted. I hope it makes sense at the time. Am I going to do take 37? Am I going to do it over and over? Because it's never going to be perfect, but hopefully you get your point or your teaching point across. But you do, I got, in the beginning, I was really hung up. You have your voice in your head that you think you sound like, and then you hear yourself on a recording and you're like, wait a second, that's me? But you have to and that's what I mean about getting over yourself. You have to just let that go and be like, whatever.
Yeah, well, that's a surprise, and it's not the best part, but yeah, we'll just move past because
why is it not the best part? Why isn't it okay to accept that? All right, it's not like you can change it.
No, it's the literal vibrations in your jaw and your skull change the pitch of your voice. That's not like, you cannot fix that. You find Gandalf, maybe Gandalf can fix that for you, but like, that's it,
Right. So we got cut off though. We're having some technical difficulties. We lost power here for a couple hours and now we're back. So we just wanted to kind of wrap it up and just touch base a little bit. I think what's helped me a lot though, as far as the personal development thing, is just, like you were saying with your gnomes, having that confidence to change things up and being the boss of your own work and doing what you want and not worrying about what people think,
That's a big deal. People think about it a lot less than we think they do. We spend 90% of our lives thinking about ourselves, but that's true for everybody. People are not spending even 20% of their lives thinking about you or me.
Right. Maybe your cat. I would think about your cat.
Yes, this is Soot, and Soot is an extremely hands-on kitten. I say kitten, but she's 3 years old now. So,
but you mentioned earlier she was a babe, like a bottle baby.
Yes, so she's very excited about humans in a way that is sometimes hard to put into words. One of her most charming things that she's developed since she was about 2 years old is when she's really happy, she forgets to swallow.
She's a drooler.
She just drips all over us. The happier she is, the more like a rainfall our lives are. It's kind of gross. We were worried she had a tumor. We actually took her to the vet and we were like, what's going on? And it's just like, well, she's fine. She's passing all the tests. And then we noticed as soon as she started purring.
She's a drooler. Sarah, it's been delightful to visit with you again. And just to wrap up, if people want to know about the Year of Gnomes, they just need to go over to your website and or your Instagram, follow you, and start gnoming. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you can start, you can stop, you can start and not stop. There are lots of options.
You can just do you with gnomes.
Exactly.
I think you're brilliant. Thanks so much for joining me again.
I think you're brilliant at building community. It's amazing what you've done, and I really admire what you give to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, it's fantastic to collaborate again.